Say it's late at night, you're home alone, drifting off to sleep, just entering that dream about Fritos, and then suddenly there's a bang at the door. Suddenly, you're wide awake, and it feels like your heart's gonna explode. You jump up, ready to run out the back door, possibly grab a Phillips head screwdriver and stab it into the darkness until it sticks into something. Now, whether it's a weeping angel or your neighbor looking to borrow a can of beans doesn't really matter, because when you heard that sudden noise, your startled brain released an icy typhoon of chemicals, and everything that's now going through your mind, like your urge to flee, your urge to defend yourself, that internal debate about whether weeping angels are even real, and, oh, where's the cat? All that is just the result of those chemicals. Our brains and our nervous systems and the substances they produce and are always bathed in are amazingly complex, nuanced systems. And even though we're always talking about our mental activity as being somehow separate from all of the biological stuff going on in our bodies, in reality, the moods, ideas, impulses that flash through our minds are spurred by our biological condition. As psychologists like to say, everything psychological is biological. So one way to understand how your mind works is to look at how the chemistry of your body influences how you think, sense, and feel about the world around you. To do that, we begin at the simplest level, the system with the smallest parts. It's all about the neuron, baby. Neurons, or nerve cells, are the building blocks that comprise our nervous systems. Neurons share the same basic makeup as our other cells, but they have electrochemical mojo that lets them transmit messages to each other. Your brain alone is made up of billions of neurons, and to understand why we think or dream or do anything, you gotta first understand how these little transmitters work. Actually, several different types of neurons in your body, from ones that are less than a millimeter long in your brain to ones that run the whole length of your leg. Yes, you have cells as long as your legs, which is nothing compared to the 150 feet the nerve cells of some dinosaurs had to be. I'm getting off topic, sorry. No matter how big a nerve is, they all have the same three basic parts: the soma, dendrites, and axon. The soma, or cell body, is basically the neuron's life support. It contains all that necessary cell action like the nucleus, DNA, mitochondria, ribosomes, and such. So, if the soma dies, the whole neuron goes with it. The dendrites, as bushy, branch-like as the trees they're named after, receive messages and gossip from other cells. They're the listeners whispering what they hear back to the soma. The axon is the talker. This long, cable-like extension transmits electrical impulses from the cell body out to other neurons, or glands, or muscles. Whereas the dendrites are short and bushy, the axon fiber is long, and depending on what type of neuron it is sometimes encased in a protective layer of fatty tissue called the myelin sheath. It's almost like an insulated electrical wire. The myelin sheath speeds up the transmissions of messages, and if it degrades, as it does with those affected with multiple sclerosis, those signals are degraded as well, eventually leading to lack of muscle control. Neurons transmit signals either when stimulated by sensory input or triggered by neighboring neurons. The dendrites pick up the signal and activate the neuron's action potential or firing impulse that shoots an electrical charge down the axon to its terminals and toward neighboring neurons. The contact points between neurons are called synapses. All those bushy little dendrites are decorated with synapses that almost, but don't quite touch the neighboring axon. The tiniest game of "I'm not touching you" of all time. They're less than a millionth of an inch apart, and that microscopic cleft is called the synaptic gap. So when an action potential runs down to the end of an axon, it activates the chemical messengers that jump that tiny synaptic gap, flying like that little air kiss into landing on the receptor sites of the receiving neuron. Those messengers are neurotransmitters. Although neurotransmitters slide right into their intended receptors like a key into a lock, they don't stay bonded to the receiving neuron. They just sort of pop out, having excited or inhibited the receiving neuron's trigger, then the extras immediately get reabsorbed by the neuron that released them in the first place, in a process called reuptake. Kind of like, here you go, bye. So neurons communicate with neurotransmitters, which in turn cause motion and emotion. They help us move around, make jazz hands, learn, feel, remember, stay alert, get sleepy, and pretty much do everything you do. Some of them just make you feel good, like the endorphins we get flooded with after running 10 miles and falling in love or eating a really good piece of pie. We've got over 100 different kinds of these brilliant neurotransmitters. Some are excitatory and others are inhibitory, and all are good reminders that everything psychological is also biological. Excitatory neurotransmitters rev up the neuron, increasing the chances it will fire off an action potential. Norepinephrine is one you're probably familiar with that helps control alertness and arousal. Glutamate is another involved in memory, but an oversupply of it can wig out the brain and cause seizures and migraines, which is why some people are sensitive to all that MSG, or monosodium glutamate, in their ramen. Inhibitory neurotransmitters, on the other hand, chill neurons out, decreasing the likelihood that the neuron will jump into action. GABA-aminobutyric acid, is a major inhibitory neurotransmitter, and you've probably heard of serotonin, which affects your mood and hunger and sleep. Low amounts of serotonin are linked to depression, and certain classes of antidepressants help raise serotonin levels in the brain. Some neurotransmitters, like acetylcholine and dopamine, play both sides and can both excite or inhibit neurons depending on what type of receptors they encounter. Acetylcholine enables muscle action and influences learning and memory. Alzheimer's patients experience a deterioration of their acetylcholine-producing neurons. Dopamine, meanwhile, is associated with learning, movement, and pleasurable emotions, and excessive amounts of it are linked to schizophrenia as well as addictive and impulsive behaviors. Some neurotransmitters are basically your nervous system's couriers, but they aren't the only chemical messengers delivering the news. They've got some competition brewing in the endocrine system. And the news of puberty, you know what I'm talking about. Hormones. Some neurotransmitters hormones act on the brain, and indeed some of them are chemically identical to certain neurotransmitters. Hormones affect our moods, arousal, and circadian rhythm. They regulate our metabolism, monitor our immune system, signal growth, and help with sexual reproduction. You could say that most of it boils down to the basics: attraction, appetite, aggression. Whereas neurons and synapses flick on and off, sending messages with amazing speed, the endocrine system likes to take its time, delivering by slow chemical communications through a set of glands that secrete hormones into the bloodstream, where they're carried to other tissues, especially the brain. So while the nervous and endocrine systems are similar in that they both produce chemicals destined to hit up certain receptors, they operate at very different speeds. It's like if the nervous system wants to get in touch with you, it sends you a text. But if the endocrine system has a message, it will like lick the stamp and put it on right your address in a note, in a pen, on paper, and then fold it up and put and mail it to you within the post office. So fast isn't always better, and your body will remember that letter longer than the text. Hormones, they linger, which help explain why it takes some time to simmer down after a moment of severe fright or anger. And our endocrine systems have a few important hormone-ruled glands. We've got a pair of adrenal glands snuggled up against our kidneys that secrete adrenaline, that famous fight or flight hormone that jacks up your heart rate, blood pressure, and blood sugar, giving you that tidal wave of energy, preparing you to run like heck or punch that charging balloon in the throat. The pancreas sits right next to the adrenal gland and uses insulin and glucagon hormones that monitor how you absorb sugar. Your body's main source of fuel. Thyroid and parathyroid glands that makes your throat secrete hormones that regulate your metabolism and monitor your body's calcium levels. And you have testicles, they're secreting your sex hormones like estrogen and testosterone, and you have ovaries, they're doing that job. And all the glands are super important, but there is one gland that rules them all. And we're talking slime stem, the pituitary. The most visible inside of it isn't deep in the bunker of the brain. It is the most influential gland in the system. It releases a vital growth hormone that spurs physical development, and that love hormone, oxytocin, that promotes warm, fuzzy feelings of trust and social bonding. But knowing the pituitary, the master gland, is that its secretions boss around the other endocrine glands, but in the pituitary as a master. And the hypothalamus region of the brain, which we will talk more about next episode. So, if a man is staring, sorry, but I'm illustrating the point. You have no control over being scared, but maybe now you do understand a little more clearly how your nervous and endocrine systems worked together to call the shots. First, the sensory input from your eyes and ears went to your brain. The simplest bits of your hypothalamus without even letting you analyze it and were like, ah! And then that ran down the chain of command from your pituitary to your adrenal glands to the hormone adrenaline to the rest of your body and then back to your brain, which then realized that I was just messing with you and told everybody to just calm down for once. The whole deal is a feedback loop. Your nervous system directs your endocrine system, which directs your nervous system, brain, gland, hormone, brain. And of course, each of these systems is fantastically complex, way more than we can get into here. So, in our next lesson, we're going to get all up in your brain and delve deeper into the different components.
Okay, class, who would like to do problem 3 on the board? Please, Sophie.
You are the master of everything, and you're your lord. First man from the mud. Oh, my God.
I don't know about that. The fruit.
I think you are good.
What was it that you wanted to ask?
You will become... And listen to what he says.
Hi, welcome back with me. Plan to. The showy white to pink flowers bloom in the spring, giving way to grows to roughly 12 to 18. Number 3 appear. They require ample space in the landscape. Number trees provide excellent 3 feet per year with great growth and also can tolerate drier soil. However, it's
One of the things that makes the sense or migration is those terms where we just currently we
Alright, that's enough of that. I'm pretty sure you get the gist of it.
She was afraid because I was naked, and so I hid. The ruler said, "Why did you hide, unless it is because you ate from the only tree from which I commanded you not to eat? You didn't eat." Adam said, "The woman you gave offered me the fruit, and I ate." And the arrogant ruler cursed the woman. The woman said, "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." The rulers turned to the serpent and cursed its shadow, so that it was powerless. And they did not know it was a form they themselves had shaped. From then on, the serpent was under the curse of the authorities. The curse was on the serpent until the perfect human was to come. The ruler turned to their Adam. They took him and cast him and his wife out of the garden. They have no blessing, for they are also under the curse. The rulers threw humanity into great confusion in a life of toil, so that their people might be preoccupied with the things of the world and not have time to be occupied with the Holy Spirit. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Neuroscience. To explain free will. The discovery of the readiness potential. As a preliminary consideration, it is important to underline that the idea of using an experiment or a series of experiments to establish whether the human being can be said to have free will implies accepting a direct link between a measurement of brain functioning and a pre-existing theoretical construct. This direct connection, as it is known, presents several problems, as we shall see. Needs conceptual refinement to avoid simplifications and unfound claims. What one can see and measure in brain activity may in fact only grasp a part of the idea of free will that we would like to test. This was one of the main criticisms to the experiments conducted so far. What is measured at the level of brain functioning in a laboratory does not match the concept of free will we refer to. For example, to determine whether someone who engages in violent behavior could have done otherwise in that specific circumstance. Definition of free will: the power of acting without the constraint of necessity or fate. The first relevant and well-known strand of research on the brain correlates of free will was that pioneered by which focused on the allegedly unconscious intentions affecting decisions regarded as free and voluntary. It should be noted that the concepts involved conscious intentions, voluntary decisions, free decisions, have no clear and shared definition, and the experiments themselves have been differently interpreted and often criticized. In any case, Libet's experiments and their variants have been repeated several times until very recently, confirming their findings with a sufficient degree of reliability. Libet based his work on Kornhuber's and Decke's 1965 discovery of the Bereshevitz's potential, the RP, a slow buildup of a scalp electrical potential of a few microvolts, mainly measured through electronephrology, EEG, in EEG, that precedes the onset of subjectively SVM. According to its discoveries, the RP is the electrophysiological sign of planning preparation. Okay, so it's planning preparation. RP is planning preparation. And the initiation of volitional acts, and is the initiation of volitional acts. The neurobiologist John Esquist speculated that the subject must become conscious of the intention to act before the onset of this RP, electrical psychological sign of planning. the neurologist John speculated that the subject must be conscious of the intention to act before the electro-psychological sign of planning and preparation. Libet had the idea that he should test his prediction. In his experiments, Libet invited the participant to move their right wrist to report the precise moment when they had the impression that they decided to do so, thanks to a big clock they had in front of them. In this way, it was possible to estimate the time of awareness with respect to the beginning of the movement, measured using an electromyogram, which records the muscle contraction. During the execution of the task, brain electrical activity was recorded through electrodes placed on the participant's scalp. The attention was focused on a specific negative brain potential, namely the RP, originated from the supplementary motor area, a brain area involved in motor preparation, which is visible in the EEG signals as a wave that starts before any voluntary movement, while being absent or reduced before involuntary and automatic movements. When one compares the subjective time of decision and what appeared at a cerebral level, the result appears as a striking blow to the traditional view of free will. In the experiment, the RP accumulating in the excretion of the movements starts in the prefrontal motor areas, long before the time when the subject seems to have made the decision. Participants became aware of this intention to take action about 350 milliseconds after the onset of such potential. The volitional process is detected to start unconsciously 550 milliseconds before the action is made in the case of non-pre-planned acts, and 1000 milliseconds before in the case of pre-planned acts. Thus, these findings seem to show that our simple actions, and therefore potentially also more complex ones, are triggered by unconscious neural activity, and that the awareness of those actions only occurs at a later time, when we think we are willing to act. In the first phase of its intervention in the debate on free will, therefore, neuroscience seemed to argue for a deflation of freedom. Neuroscientists identified a specific aspect of the notion of freedom, the conscious control of the start of the action, and researched it. The experimental results seem to indicate that there is no such conscious control. Hence, the conclusion that free will does not exist. However, it is important to highlight that this interpretation strongly depends on the idea that free will, that free choices or actions are fully eternally generated. In the sense that they are not externally determined, where external means outside the subject's conscience, and the subject is something akin to the self. As we shall see, though, this distinction seems to be neither relevant nor truly informative when considering if and how choices are free. I don't know, should we keep reading more of this? I'm going to put this in the description. I mean, I already know the law of cause and effect supersedes free will anyway. But I mean, to think that we have the ability to choose what is and what isn't is just it's mere insanity, to be honest with you guys. Like, there's so many factors you have to take into place and put them in your mind to even, come to that conclusion that you're able to do things of your own free will. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can only be somewhere at a certain time because of the allowance of what your habitat has for you to abide in. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you can't, it doesn't even work like that, man. Like, you can't do it, man. Everything's already done for you. That's exactly what Jesus said, man. Just surrender to his will, and then you will understand the truth, and then you'll be saved from the death that is becoming of you. You know what I'm saying? So I think I'm just going to link this in the description, and I'm going to continue on here with some of this here. So we have the fourth book of Enoch, which is a video I've already done. And I'm just going to play a little bit of this real quick here.
I wanted to touch on people with their minds filled with desire. See, you're just so everybody's so incredibly captivated that they don't think about, where their gas even came from. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't think about who they really are. You know what I'm saying? They don't think about how they got here. They don't think about how their parents, these people were all put in the place right where they needed to be so you could do right now. So you could do right now. And that is God. That is God's work, man. Like, but you being blind to that is it's not what we want. We don't want you to see yourself
Just a second, I'm looking for
and all
something.
that.
Alright, here it is. that good. Like you can go here. Yep, here it is. Okay, we are reading this this whole section right here. You, Enoch, have been called by God to be a teacher of propriety, a spiritual master to instruct those on the mortal plane concerning the principles which will enable them to become like God. Mankind, in their natural state, are subject to the illusions of the powers of darkness. They live their lives at enmity with God because they are ignorant of the principles of truth. Even when they try to do good, they frequently commit evil, because the laws of cause and effect are hidden from them by the illusions of mortal existence. Okay? The laws of cause and effect are hidden from them by the illusions of mortal existence. Okay? There is therefore no condemnation to them which are in Jesus Christ, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ has made me free from the law of sin and death. For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin to the flesh, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Because the carnal mind is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. So then, they that are in the flesh cannot please God. Okay? They that are in the flesh cannot please God. So how do we walk after the Spirit, right? Well, you believe that God is who he says he is. He's God. And what do we think of when we think of God? We think of the Creator. Okay? So now we have enmity, obviously, right? We have enmity because we think we can also create. What I'm trying to establish here in these few tabs up here is that we don't have that ability. Okay? Everything's already been done. And if you want to have that problem to where you think you can be God, then
Like that whole thing, just write it all in a t-shirt.
life's just going to
Slaves of darkness have
beat
no
your
power.
ass.
You are called to proclaim the Lord's word through the mortal plane until God receives you up to himself. Go, Enoch, declare the truth. Do not fear what mortals can do to you, for you are triumphant with the power of God who has saved you. Isn't that amazing?
Alright, that's it for now. I think we have an understanding how the mind works, and we have several of these that here's how I got here. Does free will exist? I just click this right here. I don't know if I'll put it in the link because you could just type that in there. I think this is just the way that it is, guys, and if you're led here, you're led here, and if you came here of your own free will, then I guess I'm gonna have to do some more ass kicking. I mean, it's just that simple, guys. People who think that they can do things according to their own will just get their ass kicked constantly by life because, unfortunately, life's in charge, guys. You know? Have a good day.